Okay, we start. J'espère que les autres vont suivre online. Okay, well, good morning. 2 minutes late to start, but welcome on this beautiful Thursday morning in Strasbourg. I must say it has been a very busy week already, and I'm still negotiating on the last details on the resolution Israel and Palestine. So I really have to do quick this meeting. I understand a lot of you also have to leave, so we will try to make it very quick, but it is an important meeting, so I think the agenda can be adopted, the minutes can be approved. I will go over to point 3, the chair's announcement. As agreed on the joint OICP-EU Bureau meeting, the next Africa-EU Parliamentary Assembly, so you can put it all in your agenda, will be the week from 18 to 21 of May. It will be in an African country. They're still discussing, so I hope they will invite us in a very nice African country. I'm also pleased to announce you that we are starting preparations for the Parliamentary Pre-Summit ahead of the African Union Summit in November, as supported by the Angola host. On the agenda is also that I have to brief you on the use of mobile phones and other electronic devices, but you got emails on that. I suppose you can all read emails, and now the new rules are in place. Before starting our exchange of views on the Sahel, I wish to inform you on an urgent matter, because I was contacted last week by Jean-Jacques Wondo. You all know Jean-Jacques Wondo. He had been in prison in Congo. He came here to explain what happened to him. We voted an urgency on him. Mr. Jean-Jacques Wondo has recently filed a formal complaint with the police in my country, in Belgium, following a threat he received in connection with the publication of an article about the death of retired Lieutenant General Sikatenda Shabani, whom he met in the Andola prison. You all know Mr. Wondo is a respected Congolese analyst and writer, that he was imprisoned in Congo and released following the international pressure, including our urgency. He was here it was not in Strasbourg, but he was with us in Brussels. I would like, as chair of the delegation, to reiterate my support to Jean-Jacques Wondo and all those amazing people out there that are striving for a better future in the DRC. Intimidation or silencing of political opponents do not have a place in Europe. So I hope you can support me in telling Jean-Jacques Wondo we are with him and we support him in everything he does. Thank you very much. Then I can go over to the point 4, the exchange of views on the political and security situation in the Sahel and the way forward in the presence of, and I really welcome you, Mr. João Cravinho. Difficult name, huh? Difficult name. It's the EU Special Representative for the Sahel region, and online we have His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Angola, and I just had a call with him, Ambassador Tete Antonio. Excellency, Ambassador, dear Mr. João, I'm pleased to welcome you today in Strasbourg. Today's session will be devoted to the situation in the Sahel. We all know it's a very complex geopolitical landscape. Since 2020, the European Parliament has adopted several resolutions addressing the multiple challenges in the Central Sahel region. The EP has urged improved oversight and collaboration with regional partners and called for enhanced preventive security cooperation. So I really think it is good that we put this in the heart of the start of this political year. I thank the colleagues who are present this Thursday morning, and I will not talk longer. I will first give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador Tete Antonio, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Angola. I hope he will be online. Angola's presidency of the African Union has taken a keen interest in addressing the situation in the Sahel. We welcome your appointment, Excellency, by President Lourenço as special envoy to the transitional leaders of the Central Sahel countries, 3 countries that are currently suspended from the African Union. Let me also highlight, Excellency, the fact that we place significant importance on incorporating an African perspective into our discussions. That's my role as the EU African Chair. We believe in a holistic approach that includes African-led efforts towards conflict resolution in Africa is crucial. I just had you online, but I will repeat my question so that colleagues also know it. Ahead of the EU-African Union Summit in Luanda, you are well positioned to provide an overview of the situation in the Sahel region and highlight the African Union's efforts in addressing the challenges. Speaking of that summit, I would like to express the strong interest of the European Parliament for having a parliamentary leg to the summit, either shortly before or in the margin of the summit of the heads of states and governments. This would be an excellent opportunity to exchange views and provide our perspective as parliamentarians to our heads of state and government. I really hope that your country, Angola, could support this important proposal. Excellency Ambassador, you have the floor.
I don't know if you can hear me. We do have some technical challenges from this side.
But we hear you.
Yeah, good. Madame Hilda Botsman, présidente du groupe parlementaire Europe-Afrique du Parlement européen, Mesdames et Messieurs le membre de l'Assemblée parlementaire de la Commission Europe-Afrique, Son Excellence Jean Cravigno, que j'espère mon cher ami est là, envoyé spécial de l'Union européenne pour la région du Sahel. Mesdames et messieurs, tout protocole observé. C'est avec un grand honneur que je participe à cette audience publique virtuelle en ma qualité de président du Conseil exécutif de l'Union africaine. Cette participation s'inscrit dans le cadre du dialogue politique structuré prévu par l'accord de Samoa qui renforce le lien historique, politique et stratégique entre l'Union européenne, l'Union africaine et les États de l'Organisation des États d'Afrique, des Caraïbes et du Pacifique. Excellences, distingués membres de l'Assemblée parlementaire de la Commission européenne, la situation sécuritaire sur l'agenda aujourd'hui dans la région du Sahel peut être considérée comme complexe et caractérisée par une combinaison de facteurs, notamment l'insurrection, le terrorisme, l'instabilité politique et les crises humanitaires. Préoccupé par cette situation, Son Excellence Juan Manuel Gonçalves Lorenzo, président de la République d'Angola et président en exercice de l'Union africaine, nous a donc mandaté en qualité d'envoyé spécial pour entreprendre une mission de bons offices dans la région du Sahel en juin 2025, tout d'abord au Sénégal, puis au Burkina Faso, au Mali et enfin au Niger. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, cette mission s'inscrit dans un contexte grave d'instabilité politique et sécuritaire dans la région du Sahel, marquée par des actes terroristes, comme je viens de le dire, d'extrémistes violents, des dysfonctionnements institutionnels et de graves menaces à la cohésion régionale. Inspiré par les principes de père fondateur de l'Organisation de l'Union africaine, l'OUA, et réaffirmé ultérieurement par l'Union africaine dans sa charte constitutive, dans son acte constitutif, à savoir le principe de solidarité et de non-indifférence, la mission avait pour objectif principal d'évaluer sur le terrain la situation politique, sécuritaire et humanitaire des populations de ce pays et de formuler des recommandations concrètes la normalisation institutionnelle et le rétablissement de l'ordre démocratique. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, la mission visait également à renforcer le mécanisme de suivi et de dialogue de l'Union africaine pour les pays touchés par des changements anticonstitutionnels des gouvernements afin d'identifier le moyen de répondre aux défis concrets auxquels ces pays sont confrontés. Elle visait aussi à consolider les mécanismes juridiques et opérationnels de l'Union africaine pour lui permettre de suivre les transitions politiques inclusives et de renforcer la résilience institutionnelle et démocratique. Au cours de la mission, la détermination et la volonté politique des autorités de transition de ces pays se sont manifestées. Elles ont cherché à renforcer le dialogue avec les différentes structures de l'Union africaine pour éviter l'isolement et l'obstracisme et contribuer aux efforts collectifs pour lutter contre un danger commun, à savoir le terrorisme et l'extrémisme violent, conduisant à des conséquences collatérales non seulement pour le continent africain, mais aussi pour d'autres continents, y compris le continent européen et le monde. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, enfin, il est tout aussi important de souligner que l'isolement, les sanctions et le manque de soutien au développement des pays en transition et de leur population auront des effets contre-productifs, exigeant ainsi de l'Union africaine, de l'Union européenne et des autres acteurs internationaux qu'ils revoient leur position de façon constructive afin de faire face d'abord au premier défi qui nous préoccupe en ce moment, qui est le défi du terrorisme, étant donné les conséquences que je viens de décrire, y compris pour des régions comme le Golfe de Guinée et pourquoi pas l'Europe. Par conséquent, la lutte contre le terrorisme dans la région du Sahel exige une approche globale et multidimensionnelle allant de mesures de sécurité et développement socio-économique et de dialogue communautaire. Ces mesures seraient de façon à accompagner leur situation dans ces pays. Compte tenu de ces contextes, et sur recommandation de son Excellence João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, de sa qualité de président en exercice de l'Union africaine, la nomination d'un envoyé spécial pour le pays du Sahel et l'Alliance des États du Sahel, AES, a été approuvée. Ce rôle est assuré par son Excellence Évariste Ndayishimiye, président de la République du Burundi et prochain président en exercice de l'Union africaine à partir de 2020. Ce dernier a accepté cette mission politique et stratégique dans l'intérêt collectif de l'Union. Le mandat de l'envoyé spécial comprend le renforcement du dialogue avec les gouvernements locaux, les dirigeants communautaires, les organisations régionales, la société civile et les autres acteurs concernés afin de promouvoir des stratégies globales pour une paix et une stabilité durable. Il sera tenu de soumettre les rapports périodiques sur l'évolution de la situation. Mesdames et Messieurs, ces mesures ne visent pas à revoir la doctrine de l'Union africaine. Elles visent à accompagner une situation concrète, d'autant plus qu'on est tous menacés par le terrorisme. Mesdames et Messieurs, la République d'Angola, en sa qualité de président en exercice de l'Union africaine, réitère sa volonté et celle du continent à renforcer le dialogue avec l'Union européenne et ses structures, afin de rechercher des solutions consensuelles aux défis auxquels la région du Sahel est confrontée à travers des différents mécanismes prévus par l'accord de Samoa, en mettant l'accent sur le triple lien paix, sécurité et développement durable. Dans ce contexte, nous recommandons, à titre de mesures concrètes, une coordination renforcée et structurée entre les envoyés spéciaux de l'Union africaine et de l'Union européenne. Nous profitons alors de cette occasion pour répondre à la requête faite par vous-même, Madame Hilda, au début, afin que l'Angola puisse accepter les propositions que vous avez faites et que nous trouvons que nous jugeons très positives, et donc notre réaction positive aussi à ces propositions de la tenue d'une réunion en marge du sommet de l'Union africaine, de l'Union européenne en Angola. Mesdames et messieurs, le renforcement de la coordination et de la synergie entre l'Union africaine et l'Union européenne devrait tenir compte des principales recommandations du rapport du panel indépendant du haut niveau sur la sécurité et le développement dans la région du Sahel, créé par les Nations Unies, l'Union africaine et dirigé par l'ancien président du Niger, son Excellence Mahamadou Issoufou, qui a mené une évaluation stratégique globale de la sécurité, du développement et de la gouvernance dans plus de 20 pays du Sahara, dont la région du Sahel et le Golfe de Guinée. Il recommande, entre autres, la création de mécanismes permanents de suivi et de la transition politique au Sahel, le soutien technique et financier aux administrations locales et à la société civile, l'intégration régionale accélérée en matière de défense et de sécurité, investissement dans l'éducation, la jeunesse, l'emploi comme outil de prévention de l'extrémisme et coordination multilatérale entre l'UA, l'UE, l'ONU et les institutions financières internationales. La République d'Angola accueillera le sommet de Luanda sur le financement du développement d'infrastructures en Afrique du 28 au 31 2025. Au nom de son Excellence Jean-Manuel Gonçalves Lorenzo, président de la République et président en exercice de l'Union africaine, nous invitons toutes les institutions de financement de développement ainsi que les secteurs privés et commercial européens à participer à cet événement important qui unit deux continents autour d'une cause commune, celui du développement inclusif, en mettant l'accent sur les infrastructures et la connectivité. Nous appelons ainsi à une participation massive des investisseurs européens aux projets emblématiques du continent visant à la transformation économique de l'Afrique, ainsi qu'à l'approfondissement de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine, ouvrant ainsi à l'Europe un marché d'environ 1,3 milliard de consommateurs. Excellences, mesdames et messieurs, pour terminer, permettez-moi de conclure en affirmant que la normalisation de la situation politique, le processus de transition politique et l'insécurité qui règne dans la région du Sahel nécessitent un effort conjoint pour améliorer les conditions de vie des populations et de ces pays. Je vous en remercie.
Merci. Thank you very much, Mr. Tete Antonio. And I'm very sorry, but I'll introduce myself. I'm the vice president of this delegation. My name is Ingeborg de Lek, and I do apologize for Ms. Woutmans. She had to leave at, all of a sudden. So thank you very much for your intervention and giving us your views on this topic. And also you were very clear, you need everybody on board. You yourself are very busy and very active within the Sahel, but you're also saying we need Europe to be there in the dialogue. So this will help me to introduce and to give the floor to Mr. João Cravino, our EU Special Representative for the Sahel. We already spoke to you in Brussels. You're the former Minister of Foreign Affairs to Portugal. And Mr. Cravino, you have been tasked by the EU Council, by the High Representative, to develop a renewed EU approach towards the Sahel region. And we would like to hear from you an update on the situation regarding this ongoing discussion and what is the way forward from your point of view. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, Madam Ingeborg de Lek. My first word today is to thank you for the close dialogue that we have been maintaining since I took office. Your attention to the Sahel is very important for the work that I am and we are doing, so I really appreciate your efforts, and I thank all honourable members for their presence today. And I would also like to send a very special greeting to my friend, Minister Tete Antonio, who has been engaging with the Sahel not only as a Special Envoy for President João Lourenço, but also as he steers the work of a successful Angolan African Union presidency. Muito obrigado por estar aqui hoje conosco. C'est un plaisir de revenir au Parlement européen, cette fois à Strasbourg. Cet échange de vues tombe à point nommé. Au cours des derniers mois, depuis ma prise de fonction et comme demandé par la présidente von der Leyen et la vice-présidente, haute représentante Kaja Kallas, les travaux visant à élaborer une approche renouvelée pour le Sahel ont progressé. Après de nombreux échanges avec les principaux acteurs concernés, les discussions ont avancé et nous espérons pouvoir adopter cette approche avant la fin de l'année. Le Conseil d'affaires étrangères devrait être en mesure de s'en saisir dans les prochaines semaines pour une mise en œuvre concrète et rapide. La perspective du prochain sommet Afrique-Union européenne est aussi favorable avec une Union africaine pleinement réengagée au Sahel aux côtés de la CEDEAO. Le processus est alors clairement engagé, ce qui est une bonne nouvelle, et voici pourquoi. The ties between the European Union and the Sahel are long-standing, but both regions have changed and continue to change. And there has been perhaps insufficient awareness of these deep changes, both in Europe and in the Sahel, and of the impact that these changes produce in the dialogue between the two. Certainly, we as European Union have not sufficiently adapted over the years, and as a result, our dialogue has been seriously eroded, and we have not managed to help advance key priorities such as peace and stability or socioeconomic development. The renewed approach aims to change that. It is an effort to map our interests and to define how we can achieve them based on mutual respect in a region which is of strategic importance and in our immediate neighbourhood. Doing so requires, first and foremost, to listen before acting, which is what I have been doing since I took office, with three goals in mind. To find a converging way forward amongst EU member states, to ensure a coherent approach amongst the European Union institutions, working with all, including, of course, with this chamber, and to develop a spirit of open, frank and candid dialogue with all relevant actors in the 5 Sahelian countries at the core of my mandate, which are Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania and Niger, without, of course, neglecting the regional actors such as ECOWAS or African Union, who are impacted by the crisis in the Central Sahel and who can influence it. Advancing in these fronts is indispensable if we want, as we should, that the European Union should return to its position of being a natural partner of choice for the Sahel and West Africa. I believe that over the past 9 months we have made considerable progress in all 3 areas of work. The European Union's renewed approach will be the product of what is now a much greater degree of convergence amongst 27 member states, and also the explicit wish by the Sahelian partners to find a way forward in our relations, while also seeking a greater alignment between the European instruments and providing an overarching political vision for their work. This is, of course, easier said than done. The calls for full sovereignty and the partnership of equals that we hear from the region are not merely rhetorical. They should be taken seriously with a constructive spirit rooted in mutual commitments and also, of course, mutual responsibilities. To re-engage against the backdrop of severe and enduring security and governance challenges, geopolitical competition, and strong anti-Western sentiment, which is fueled by socio-economic grievances and also by systematic disinformation, especially from youth. This is a thorny task. Yet, we must not let paralysis prevail when, by staying true to our values and principles, we find areas of divergence. We are aware that there are considerable areas of divergence between us and countries that are currently under military regimes after illegitimate overthrows of government. Nevertheless, when we have interests of our own to protect and to promote, we must also be able to agree to disagree and to continue to dialogue so that we defend these interests. To be successful in that, we must, I believe, seek to advance based on mutually understood interests. This means, firstly, to clearly know and to explain our key interests in the Sahel. Secondly, to understand the Sahelian interests vis-à-vis the European Union, which are far from homogeneous and which warrant a country-by-country approach, despite transnational challenges. And lastly but not least, we need to find out how our and their interests can overlap. Think, for example, of mobility and migration, or of infrastructure development and access to basic services and resources, which is an essential part of creating a locally based future for young people, or of insecurity and the root causes of terrorism, which have provoked streams of refugees, some of whom come to Europe, but most of whom are absorbed by neighboring countries like Côte d'Ivoire. Even if our interests are not expressed in the same way, there are certainly areas for mutually beneficial cooperation. In this spirit, and following extensive consultations across the board, 3 domains of action have emerged as most relevant to advance European Union interests. Firstly, political and diplomatic engagement, promoting dialogue, leveraging the Samoa Agreement, and boosting our strategic communication. Second, human security, which encompasses protection of civilians and cooperation in the field of migration, taking advantage of good practices, such as CSDP engagements. And thirdly, social cohesion and economic opportunities, focused on people-to-people ties, climate resilience, access to basic services and resources, as well as opportunities for youth, women, and other vulnerable groups. Fortunately, we are not alone in rethinking our frameworks. Our African partners are also actively seeking to re-establish channels of dialogue with the Sahelian countries. My visits to the coastal states of Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Senegal, Liberia, Ghana, Togo, and Benin, which are also within my mandate, as well as to the Maghreb and to Addis Abeba, have made clear to me the willingness to overcome the existing deadlocks, bilaterally and regionally, including African Union and ECOWAS, the deadlocks that exist with regard to the Sahel. In the last months, we have seen very positive signs, namely the appointment of several special envoys for the region by both the African Union Commission and the chairperson, as well as initiatives from Ghana, Togo, and Senegal, and of course Angola as African Union presidency. Commitment by Sierra Leone, the new ECOWAS presidency, is also laudable. It seems clear to me that the Sahel is an evident region where a close dialogue between Africans and Europeans can yield very positive results. If I look back to the 25 years of AU-EU partnership that we are celebrating this year, peace and security, prosperity and mobility are constant factors in our relations, including, of course, with the Sahelian countries. Now, as preparations are underway for a very successful AU-EU summit in Luanda, my request to you, honourable members, can be summarised in 3 points. First, to promote active dialogue about the Sahel, especially with African interlocutors, but of course beyond that as well. Secondly, to advocate for growing AU-EU cooperation on the Sahel, also in the context of the negotiations for the next multi-annual financial framework. And thirdly, to support the efforts of our African partners, including the Angolan AU presidency and the African Union Commission. And now, onwards to Rwanda. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Please, the floor is yours.
Merci, and thank you, Mr. Gravino, for your intervention. And
thank you for your
now I would like to open the floor to our colleagues. Who wishes to intervene on this subject and has questions for our speakers? So, dear colleagues, who wishes to take the floor?
Regulations for bringing autonomous cars into the traffic.
And
I think
yes, thank you very much, Chair, and
would be very good to have specific boundaries. How that could be done.
For your
it's not specifically
for your information.
Technologically solution.
I think for me, there's only maybe one overarching question that I have, because you've spoken,
technology has to be
Mr. Ravino, about the interests of our own, our interest in the region. We know that other countries also have interest in the region, and this interest is, of course, because of
for Europe, and then
critical raw materials and resources that are available also. in the region. And
to operate a car,
of course, when we talk about
a train,
social and economic development and social services and infrastructure, this is a different debate. I think the debate that we also need to have is how can these countries that are so rich in resources be the owner of their own resources and also be able to work on the development of those resources without external partners coming in either to use it economically or also use and abuse it in a more terrorist or a more violent way. So this is a question that I would have to you, but also to Minister Tete. How does this? How is this part of your discussions? Because I think this is the underlying problem of the instability in the region.
Which is not dependent from infrastructure. We have all
in our
hand, and we don't need nothing.
And I think I don't see any other questions from any other colleagues. So from myself, I also want to ask something, because Mr. Tete Antonio, I was listening to you, and given your recent missions to Senegal, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, what do you see as the most pressing challenges that require immediate action from both the African side as the European side to stabilize the Sahel region? And how do you see the role of EU, what is special about the role of the EU in the Sahel compared to other international partners, and what could we do better? And I have one specific question for Mr. Gravina, because you were telling us about strategic communication about the EU and disinformation, and I was wondering, or considering this involvement of these geopolitical issues into the Sahel, how can the EU leverage its partnership with local actors and counteract these influences? What should we do of, external actors such as Russia and China? And how can we deal with it in a better way?
Just on a few roads in Europe. And
so for answering or reflecting on these questions raised, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tete Antonio first, and then afterwards to Mr. Gravina. Mr. Tete Antonio.
2010. And saying, okay, let's try this, and then the next, and the next, and the next. We are on a bottom-up way, and we are not on a top-down solution. And the top-down solution could be set up a framework, and then under this framework you can rely as a producer of automated cars that the digital infrastructure is given, that the digital
la dernière question plutôt, quelles sont les actions immédiates à entreprendre étant donné la situation au Sahel? Je disais tantôt que notre mission au Sahel a surtout à viser à comprendre, n'est-ce pas, la situation sur le terrain. Deuxièmement, quand on a compris la situation, nous avons ce devoir comment
this was my fault. Well, since we have still 10 minutes left, just a question out of my curiosity. Since we are preparing for a seminar proposed by dear colleague Lena from Humanities and Social Sciences, well, the question is about the adoption. How many are of those probably in different member states who are really willing, those early adopters who would be willing to drive such a car? You might have some data in that too, and what are probably the reasons? Is this because just they want to have
au terrorisme? Et de façon immédiate, nous pensons qu'il faut que nous ayons dans notre conscience collective que la question du terrorisme au Sahel dépasse, n'est-ce pas, les limites de peut-être certains principes que nous avons, et que nous pouvons tous être affectés. Et c'est pour cela, d'ailleurs, en ce qui concerne l'Union africaine a contribué, nous avons le Fonds de la paix, à débourser des financements justement pour que certains de ces pays puissent faire face à ces défis. Donc, le défi immédiat, c'est l'insécurité au Sahel. L'insécurité au Sahel, étant donné que cette insécurité est aussi l'origine de beaucoup d'autres effets collatéraux tels que l'exploitation illicite des ressources naturelles. Nous parlons par notre propre expérience en tant qu'un pays qui est l'Angola, qui a connu 27 ans de guerre, et nous avons eu tous ces phénomènes d'exploitation illicite des ressources naturelles quand il y a l'insécurité. Et si on retrouve la stabilité, sans doute, beaucoup de ces questions collatérales plutôt pourront trouver des solutions. Deuxièmement, nous avons aussi compris que l'approche, il est connu de tout le monde que l'approche ne consiste pas seulement à regarder les aspects militaires. Le fait que ce pays soit sous sanction cause nécessairement des conséquences sociales, y compris sur des questions de développement. Et donc, on doit regarder de façon globale, n'est-ce pas, les conséquences de la situation qui prévaut au Sahel. Deuxièmement, comment vous avez posé une question, comment assurer, n'est-ce pas, tout cela, étant donné la présence des acteurs externes dans la région. Nous sommes, en tant qu'Angola, nous avons été impliqués dans d'autres scénarios où on a eu à peu près la même question posée, telle que la République centrafricaine, où nous avons travaillé, n'est-ce pas, sur le dialogue entre le gouvernement et les groupes armés, et y compris jusqu'à adopter la feuille de route de Luanda qui est encore en application. Notre intérêt premier, c'est d'abord le pays de ces régions, ce sont le peuple de ces régions. Nous pensons que toutes les autres questions adjacentes sont surtout le résultat de cette instabilité. Et je pense qu'en ce moment précis, nous devons avoir des priorités. On ne pourra pas embrasser toutes les questions qui se posent dans la région, mais traçons des priorités et de façon coordonnée. Je dirais aussi tantôt que dans mon discours que la coordination, le traitement de ces problèmes ne doit pas être isolé. Je pense que nous avons une expérience de coopération avec l'Union européenne dans d'autres scénarios. Nous avons été dans des scénarios très violents tels que nous sommes, plutôt, tels que la Somalie, où le déploiement de la mission de l'Union africaine était fait grâce à la coopération avec l'Union européenne. Je peux citer celui-là, tout comme d'autres scénarios nous avons travaillé. Je pense que utilisant le créneau ou la coopération avec les institutions régionales ne feront que renforcer, n'est-ce pas, cette action. Étant donné d'autres facteurs que mon cher ami Jean Ocravine, que j'ai le plaisir de voir par ce biais, a bien développé. Voilà, madame, je pense que c'est ce que nous revient à répondre concernant les questions qui ont été posées.
Thank you very much, Mr. Antonio, for your wisdom and your insight in saying that terrorism is not something you can fight with counterterrorism, but we have to work on it together and see it from several sides, so not only military but also economically. So thank you very much for your insights. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Carino. Please continue.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to take the opportunity to fully subscribe to the ideas that have been developed by Minister Tete Antonio and to point out that they provide us with an excellent basis for cooperation between the European Union and the African Union, and that this is a very positive news. I would like to, with respect to the questions that have been raised, so Madam Mai, on the question of how can the resource-rich countries actually benefit from these resources. This is a challenge that we have seen in many parts of the world, and in particular on the African continent, for decades, for many decades. And some countries in Africa have found the right formulae to do this, and other countries have not. It's not a specificity of the Sahel. I think that it is absolutely fundamental that the frameworks should be in place for when there are resource extraction activities going on, for populations, local populations, to benefit. And there are some good examples on the African continent. And my suggestion is that it is these good examples that we should be taking to the countries of the Sahelian, the Central Sahel, who have considerable resources, but which have in fact not been very beneficial for the population. And of course these resources are not beneficial for the population if they are conceded to people who use them for financing mercenaries. This is the case with Wagner Group and with Africa Corps. This is not the best way to develop the country, obviously. Nevertheless, there are many European companies that I believe should be available for a decent, open dialogue with the governments of all countries in the African continent in order to find the appropriate balance between their mining activities and the needs for development of the local populations. Local populations should benefit from what is under the ground. On question of strategic communication, this is a very important one because of the proliferation of false information that we are seeing. This has been weaponized very consciously, and I should say very effectively, by Russia. And it presents us with a strategic challenge. It is not at all easy. It is much more easy to spread fake information than it is to defend oneself against fake information. The mechanisms that we have been using have meant that we've spent more time discussing fake information than putting out credible information. And of course, as soon as we managed to definitively demonstrate that a piece of information is fake, then another piece of information or fake information circulates. So we need to invest a little more. We don't have the proper financial, at the moment, tools for investing a bit more in strategic communication. I would suggest that the next financial framework should be a moment where we can, without making any significant difference, this is a drop in the ocean of the multi-annual financial framework, but it is a requirement to be able to be combative. And the countries that I have visited in democracies in West Africa, I've just come back from Liberia, for example, they are extremely worried about this information because they feel that it is undermining the relationship of trust between the citizens and the institutions, and which is basic for the sustainability of democracy. So they worry about their own democracy as a result of the fake information. This is not a secondary point. It is an absolutely central challenge that we have to be paying attention to.
Thank you, and also thank you very much for your insights and also for putting our attention to it, that we can steer from this disinformation issue which is going on within Africa, and we can divide our attention to it and with money, because sometimes you feel so powerless once you're there in Africa and you see people waving these Russian flags. You're like, oh, what's going on here? I would like to thank all our distinguished guest speakers for their time and availability and their contributions for today. So thank you very much. And for our colleagues, this brings me to almost to the end of this meeting. Is there any other business you want to have on this? So we have to come to the end of the meeting. Then I have to look because I'm a substitute chair. Our next delegation meeting will be communicated. It will be communicated through the email in time. So hereby I close the meeting and I thank you all very much. Yes, thanks.